Hey there, fellow authors and book lovers. My name is Zoe Mellors. I am an illustrator, designer, and formatter, and I'm here to help make your picture book a success. I'd like to start by saying a huge thank you to Vicky and the team for inviting me here today so that I can speak to you about my top 5 tips for finding your dream illustrator. Before we get started, please make sure you like and subscribe to this channel so that you can stay up to date with the latest tips and advice from the team. Tip 1, build your foundation. There are a few things you need to think about before finding an illustrator. The first thing that you need to think about is getting your manuscript edited by a professional. This is a very important step because your manuscript can change drastically, especially during developmental edits. Whole scenes could change or disappear. And if you've already had your illustrations completed, you will not only have to spend more time waiting for your illustrations to be completed, but you'll also have to pay out of pocket to have brand new illustrations created. Your old illustrations will never even see the light of day. The second thing to work out is your budget. Illustrations, unfortunately, vary a lot in price. This can be for a multitude of reasons, from your illustrator isn't based in the same country as you, maybe they have more experience, less experience, maybe they have a traditional medium that takes a long time to perfect and to dry. Maybe you've chosen an illustrator that has a lot of detail in their work. All of these are factors that can change how much that illustrator charges for their services. In general, I would tend to recommend a budget between $2,000 and $10,000 for your illustrations. Now, I'm very aware that A, sounds like a lot, and B, that is a lot of a difference in between those two numbers. But that will all change depending on how many illustrations you're after, the style, etc. So, have a think about what you need in your story and set your budget. You will find that some illustrators will offer their services from as little as $5 to $20. But unfortunately, you do get what you pay for. And having illustrations done so cheap, there is no way that anyone could make a living doing illustrations for those prices. Just think about the minimum wage where you are now. I'm sure that it's more than $5 an hour, which means that your illustrator at $5 an hour or $5 a page isn't even going to be spending an hour on your work. The third thing to think about is your time frame. Now, I have a bunch of authors that come to me and say, "Hi, I want to book you for my book. I want it published in 2 months' time." There is no way that I can complete a book in 2 months. Now, most of the time, most illustrators will be booked up in advance. It's how we make our living. Personally, I'm currently booked up for a year, and some illustrators book up way longer than that in the future. If you go to them and say you would like something so quick, not only are they not available to start within that time frame, but also, even if I did drop everything and start on a book right now, it would be hard work to get a book out in that short amount of time. Some of my personal illustrations can take up to 8 to 12 hours for one illustration. Bear in mind that most children's books have 24 and a cover and additional pages and marketing support and formatting. My recommendation would be to pick a time frame that gives you plenty of time to get your story ready. Not only that, but it is also important that you think about your marketing. If you release a book in 2 months and nobody's heard of you before, nobody's heard of your book before, how can you expect people to buy it? The general recommendation is that you start marketing your book 6 months before it is due for release. In my opinion, it would be better to err on the side of caution. Try to give yourself as much time as possible to be able to not only make your book the absolute best that it can be, but to also give you the time to put together a stellar marketing strategy. Tip 2, do your research. Okay, now we're on to the fun part. This is the part where you get to jump into a load of books and see what you like. What sort of books do you like looking at? What's popular in the shops right now? If you haven't been in a while, I would recommend highly going to your local bookstore and seeing what's out there, what's on the charts, what sells well. At the end of the day, if you are planning to do a book, but you have no idea what's in the market right now, you're going to struggle to compete with those for your audience's attention. Have a look while you're there. What type of illustrations do you like? Do you prefer watercolor? Do you prefer digital? Do you like something that's quite minimal? Or do you prefer something that's super busy with lots of detail to keep your readers coming back for more? Once you know what you're looking for with illustrations, it'll be much easier for you to find somebody that fits your artistic vision. It's also important at this stage to have a look at what sort of book you like. Are you planning to do paperback? Are you planning to do a hardcover? Are you planning to do both? What about the size? Are you looking at a square? Are you looking at a horizontal or even a portrait book? This is really important to get started up front because if you change your mind after hiring an illustrator, it can be incredibly expensive to change all of those illustrations to match the new layout. Trust me, I've done it before. I did work with somebody who changed their mind halfway through a project from a horizontal book to a square. This took a lot of redesigning. Suddenly the text didn't fit and the characters were half of a page, so I had to redraw them, changing the composition. I basically had to do hours and hours of work all over again. We don't want you in that same boat. So have a think about your orientation and the size. Please think as well about where you're getting this printed. So, for example, if you are wanting to print this using a print on demand printer, such as KDP or Ingram Spark, you are limited in what sizes you can have. For example, the biggest square book you can have is 8.5 by 8.5 inches square. If you wanted one at 10, 11, or 12 inches square, you are not going to be able to achieve that through a pod printer. This means that you will likely have to go offset and get them printed specifically for you. Make sure you have a look into the differences between pod printing and offset printing. You can find some information in the description box below or check out At Home Author as they will be able to help and guide you as to which better suits your story. Tip 3, how to find your illustrator. Okay, so you've done your research, you know what size you want your book, you know how you're going to get it printed, and you have had it edited. It is beautiful and ready for your illustrator to take it to the next level. Where do you look? There are illustrators seemingly everywhere online, but how do you reach them? How do you contact them? One of the big ways to find illustrators, rather unsurprisingly, is through social media. Specifically, Facebook is a great way to meet and connect with illustrators. So, on a lot of these groups, especially author groups or self published author groups, you will find people discussing what illustrators they've used, sharing their artwork, sharing how it was to work with these people. This is super valuable because it helps you to know that not only is that illustrator legit, but how are they to work with? Do other people recommend them? Specifically, when using social media to look for your illustrator, make sure that you're looking at their reviews. Make sure you're looking at books that they have out, maybe even checking them out on Amazon. Do they have a lot of books out? Do their projects get finished? Are you happy with the quality of the books that they have got published out? If it's somebody that you're seriously considering hiring, it may even be worthwhile buying one of the books that they have worked on, just so that you can check for things like consistency of characters, making sure the text placement looks great. It is a little bit of an investment, especially if you have a few illustrators that you're interested in, but it's so much better to get that work done now and make sure that you're happy with that. You also have sites like At Home Author. They have a free downloadable list of their favorite illustrators that they love working with. And that way, you know that they have been used and they've been trusted by authors just like you. So please check out the description box below to find a link to where you can find that amazing list. You do also have illustration agencies where you can find illustrators. So if there's someone that you like that you found that say that they're represented by an agent, you can always take a look at those agency sites as well and reach out to them directly. Another great source is having a look at places like Upwork or Freelancer or even Fiverr. Please be careful though when looking at sites like these. A lot of these illustrators haven't been vetted. So, what you'll find is that anyone can say on there that they are an illustrator. It doesn't mean that they necessarily create the work that is in their portfolio, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get a higher quality of work from that individual. Now, you may be thinking, how on earth do I know if they created a picture of something? How do I know that they haven't just taken that from somewhere else? So here are my tips for how to make sure that a portfolio has actually been completed by the illustrator that you're hiring. So the first thing to look for is consistency throughout the portfolio. Now, sometimes an illustrator will have a couple of different styles that they like to work in for different projects. That is totally fine. And it is something to bear in mind when taking these tips into consideration. But if you happen across a portfolio that has a different style for every single artwork, that person isn't drawing those artworks. They're taking other illustrators' work and putting it on as their own. So always check the consistency. Another great thing to look for is there a variation in the characters and poses? You may find that sometimes illustrators will be a really good one-trick pony. Maybe they found one really great image and they just continue to reuse it. Also, check out for any weird croppings or any strange sized images. Sometimes illustrators will outright crop off somebody's watermark off their illustrations so that they can pass them for their own. So if somebody's got half a face missing on an illustration or is posed weirdly in the composition, that may be a sign that someone has taken that image from elsewhere. If you're ever uncertain, you can always do something like run a reverse Google search and find where that original came from. Honestly, though, follow your guts. If you are not 100% happy and satisfied, walk away and find another illustrator. There are plenty out there that can help bring your dream to life. And not only that, but love your book just as much as you do. There is no need for you to settle for the first illustrator that you find. Tip 4, book a sample. Imagine you're going on a blind date. You'd want to meet the person before tying the knot, right? We don't marry our future partners the very first time that we meet them, or decide who our best friends are within the first 5 minutes or in a couple of message exchanges. Think about having a sample as going on a date. It gives you a chance to get to know the illustrator, get to know what their communication's like, check the quality of their work, and make sure that you're happy to proceed. If you go to book an entire book with somebody before you even had a sample, what are you going to do if you don't like what they're coming out with? What if it just doesn't look right? What if your characters don't look right in their style? What if even worse than that? What if you find out they are a clip art artist and they haven't actually created your things from scratch? By having a sample, you are then free to walk away and say, actually, this isn't right for this project. Thank you for your time. I'm going with another illustrator. It doesn't just have to weed out people that are using clip art as well. It could just be that that style just doesn't suit your book at all. So I would always recommend giving an illustrator a page from your story. That way, if you like the sample, you can then use it in your final book and you don't have to pay for it. You've already paid for that page, which is something that is also very important with samples. You will expect to pay for them. Now, looking at someone's portfolio and getting a feel for what they do is obviously free. But if you are asking an artist to spend their time on a bespoke image just for you, you will need to pay for that. My recommendation would be to give them a brief, but leave room for their creative interpretation. You want to see what this illustrator can do and what they bring to the table. Now, the first thing to keep an eye out for is they should send you a sketch of what your final design will look like. If your illustrator will not send you a sketch or just jumps to the final artwork, this is a very big red flag. After all, it doesn't take too long to make a sketch, but it can take hours to fully render an illustration. Why would I spend hours and hours doing something that you might not even like? If your illustrator doesn't provide you with sketches, that is a really big indicator that they are using somebody else's artwork, AI art, or clip art, and is a situation that I personally would recommend that you then walk away from. When you're at the sketch stage, depending on how your illustrator works, I would see if you can make a change. It doesn't have to be a big one, and even if the illustration is perfect, I would recommend making a tiny, tiny change. The reason why is A, you want to see if your illustrator is willing, or do you tell them about the change and they roll their eyes? Do they get snappy? Do they get confrontational? Do they refuse? Do they take 3 weeks to get your 5 minute change back to you? Do they ever get it back? Or do they just not make the change? This is all going to help you know what your relationship is going to be like with this illustrator moving forwards. At the end of the day, as much as we are trained to look at composition and character designs, if you had a specific vision for a page and they're not meeting it, they are going to have to bend and be flexible to what works for you. So if they don't provide sketches or they're not willing to make that change, I would recommend looking for another illustrator. Once you've approved the sketches and you're happy to go ahead, they should then either do some color sampling, which is where very basic color goes down onto the piece for you to check if you're happy with the colors, or they'll go straight to final. This varies depending on your illustrator. Once you get to the final artwork, this isn't a point where you can make changes usually with most illustrators, but make sure that those questions are asked. When do you get to make changes? How many do you get to make? Tip 5, always have a contract. Now, I know, we've done the fun things, we've done the illustrations, we've done the buying books. Who doesn't love buying books? I know. But we have to talk about the boring things now. We have to talk about the contracts. Now, contracts are super important. They not only protect you, but they also protect your illustrator. They help you to know, when is your project going to be delivered? How is your project going to be delivered? What do you get in your project? If every time you've spoken with your illustrator, it's been by a phone, and then they say, oh, you only asked for 20 illustrations, you never asked for 24. I want more money. What are you going to do? How are you going to prove it? Same with if, in 5 years, you've maybe made some t-shirts, you've made bookmarks. What if your illustrator comes to you and says, I never gave you the rights to print them in anywhere but your book? Because at the end of the day, most illustrators will hang on to their own copyright for the artwork that they create. What are you going to do? Always make sure that you have a plan in place to have a contract. If an illustrator isn't willing to have a contract, that is also a major red flag. Why? It shouldn't be difficult. Even if you find a contract somewhere or you write one yourself that you're willing to share with them, make sure that it says what you want and make sure that you are protected. Make sure it says what happens if the illustrator isn't getting back in touch with you. Make sure you know your rights. So, do you own the rights for the illustrations, or do they remain with the illustrator? If the illustrator owns the rights, what are you able to do with them? And do they grant you a worldwide license? Yes. There are different types of licenses, and some of them only access certain countries. I made granted licenses UK only. So if you print and ship in America, well, you have to pay me more money. Make sure you know what you're signing and make sure that it is signed and in place. Another thing to ask when you're looking at your contract and the quote is asking your illustrator whether or not they also offer book design services and typesetting/formatting. Now, some illustrators do offer both, Some illustrators only offer one. Please bear in mind these are two very different skill sets. So just because someone is an illustrator doesn't necessarily mean that they are able to do the book design side of things. If they do not do the book design side of things, then you will just need to find an additional book designer. Now, you can contact book designers either before illustrations, so that they can show the illustrator how much space they need for the text, or you can hire them afterwards. But they will then have to work with whatever space the illustrator has left them. So I do recommend contacting a designer before. They will then be able to get your book put together into a PDF and absolutely ready for you to go to Amazon, to KDP, or to your offset printer and start getting your book published. All right, and that's it for today's adventure into the wonderful world of children's book illustrations. I hope these tips are helpful and I hope they help you on your journey to becoming the author of your dreams. If you have any questions for me, please feel free to drop them in the comments below, or why not follow me on my pages? You can find me at Zoe Mellors Illustration. I'm available on Facebook and Instagram, and I'm also available at www.zoemellors.illustration.com. I am available to hire for both illustrations and formatting and book design. So if there's anything that I can do to help, or if you just want to have a chat about books, please drop me a DM and I will happily talk your ear off about books for as long as you wish. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing to this channel so that you can get more tips and advice from the fantastic team at Home Author. Once again, I'd like to say a massive thank you for having me here today. Thank you for staying till the end of the video, and until next time, keep creating and keep writing those amazing stories. I can't wait to see what you have in store.